Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games, back with another cool pinball repair video for you this evening. We have been working on this ultra awesome 1979 Bally Star Trek pinball machine, the original one. Been going through it. We bought this thing out of a field. It was in an old beat up trailer, mobile home. And had started falling through the floor and everything else. If you didn't see our previous videos, go back and watch them. We've had people say they can't find our previous videos. If you click our name, it goes to our channel, and then go to our video link at the top, and then you can search through all of our videos. And the video before this one is the previous video, so go check that out. But we're gonna work on the electronics now on this thing. We've brought this back cosmetically quite a ways, but it's not doing anything electronically yet. We do have the light bulbs working on the playfield, but not on the back box, right? So if you're working on one of these, what you want to do is start at the wall and work through the machine. So the power cord comes into the game. It goes to a line filter down there on the bottom in this area of the cabinet, right down there. And then the lines go up to this rectifier board and transformer. Okay, so that's the first thing that we're going to mess with. I'm going to pull that out of the cabinet and go put it on the bench in the back. We're going to work on it just a little bit, and we'll go from there. Now, if you are working on a Bally Star Trek, so you have found this video to help you repair yours, keep in mind that all of the Ballys work very similarly, and the old Sterns work very similarly. So if you've got one, you don't necessarily have to watch a video on a Star Trek. If you find a video on a $6 Million Man or a Matahari or anything like that, any of those early games, a Kiss, they all have the same boards in them, so it'll help you fix yours. So we've done tons of series on saving old pinball machines and how we do it. So you can go back and watch some of our other videos as well if you want, and our other series and playlists on games that we've repaired in the past. So the first thing that we always do is we pull out that rectifier board and the transformer and start working on that. So I'm going to turn it off, unplug it from the wall, take this cage off of it, and we'll go check it out. Now remember, this machine, whenever we got it, was completely neglected and abused and screwed up. So if you've got one you're trying to fix, they're never too far gone. If you think they are, go back and watch the first video in this series. So let me get that rectifier board out of there and we'll check it out. Okay, so here it is, straight out of the field. So what do I see at first glance? Everything looks pretty good. I usually kind of brush them off. Cleans them up a little bit. Right. It was starting to burn a little bit on the general illumination pins. The only pins that burn on them are the ones that do the general illumination, because they're a higher amperage in their AC. This connector is for the back box, so that's where the lights would plug in on the back box that weren't lit, but the playfield ones were. Excuse me, but the playfield ones were. We've got a diode here that must have broke at some point and then was replaced. So what they did was they clipped the old one off, and then they soldered the new one on the front. That way they didn't have to take this rectifier board off. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I wouldn't do it, but and then see how there's the one fuse missing? That's because to get the lights on the playfield, we wanted the lights to work on the playfield just so that we could mess with that whenever we were doing all of that work on it. So I checked, and this fuse was blown, which was the main power fuse. Okay, so I replaced it. Everything was fine, but the reason this fuse is missing is because of this. Look at that. What were they thinking? So if you're not familiar with these old fuses, a fuse is like a little skinny wire that is easier to, that's an easy point for the power to break. So see those little lines in there? So there's a bunch of different types, right? So if you get a short, what happens is it starts sending so much amperage through whatever your power is on, which can be the traces on the board or the wires in your house or whatever. You want there to be somewhere where it's really easy for it to burn up. So the fuse is the place where it's really easy to burn up. So the fuse burns up, and then that disconnects the power until you can get rid of the short, right? So way back in the day, in people's houses, they had these circuit breakers that had round twist-in fuses. You twist them in, and then you could twist them back out. They stopped using those because they were just the perfect size for somebody to take a penny, some kind of coin, and if the fuse blew, you could stick a penny in the hole where the fuse was, and that would reconnect the power. But the problem is, if you didn't fix the short, or if there was another short down the road, it would cause a big fire. Something else would catch on fire instead of the fuse. So that's what's going on here. The guy has taken a blown fuse and wrapped it with aluminum foil so that it no longer is blown. It's connected from this side to this side, and that's connecting the power back together. That's a real bad idea, people. Don't do that. Come on now. Come on, people. People don't put aluminum foil on a fuse, people. Come on now. You can't do that. That's not smart, people. You know I only say it because I'm truly genuine. Right? Come on, people. You don't want to do that. That's a bad idea. Okay, so there may be a reason that fuse blew, at some point. This is the 122-125 transformer. These were probably on all the early Ballys. So, what do you do to get it where it's ready to go? Well, you might clean it a little bit, but you don't necessarily have to. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this rectifier board, and we're going to take these 3 screws out here on the bridge rectifiers. And by doing that, you can pop it off of these little posts, and you can look at the back of it. So we're going to work on these pins and resolder all of those so that they make good connection again, right? You can replace these as well if you want, but these are not all that burn up. There was a couple places here where it was getting hot, but the actual pins themselves still actually look pretty good. Some people swear by replacing them, though. So if you want to replace them, you go right ahead. I think usually it's unnecessary. But what would I know? So we're not going to replace ours unless we have to. But we are going to work on the back of that board. So I'll take those loose and we'll look at the back of it. So this is the back side of those pins. Now a lot of times whenever you turn this over, these will be broken loose. They won't be making good connection anymore. This one looks pretty decent because I think someone has already added a little solder to them. Solder, S-O-D-D-E-R. But these over here don't look all that great. Those end ones there. Okay. So I've had people ask me, do you remove the old solder? I don't. I just add a little extra. It's metal, people. Once it's mixed back up, you're good. Now, you may have a different opinion, and that's fine. You do you. I'm going to keep doing me. Yeah, so that all needs to be freshed up a little bit. So no, you don't have to remove it. You just flow a little bit more onto it, but just a little bit, and it'll heat it up and mix it back up, and everything will be gravy. But what helps it is if you take like a wire brush and scrape it a little bit first, just to get all the dust and dirt and all the contaminants that people are going to talk about down below in the comments. All right, so I'm going to flow a little solder back on all of that, and then we'll go from there. All right, got lots of solder on there, got it reflowed, and everything seems to be making really good solid connection. Put some new thermal paste on it. Somebody got all over me a while back because I didn't tell them to put thermal paste on it. Put thermal paste on it. Make sure to do that. Okay, and once you do that, you can go ahead and bolt it back down because we're going to work on the front part now. The bridge rectifiers, you might have a bad one though, so you may end up. Oh, I'm gonna crap all over me. You may end up having to replace those. If you do, it's better to use a bigger one on the top, not on the bottom. They have the bridges on the bottom where they connect to that little plate that I'm trying to get back on there right now. Okay. To use as a heat sink, but if they are on the top, they're bigger and they can sit up here, so you can use like you could probably fit a 35 amp up there, and you have to bend the legs a little bit, but you can actually put all three of them on the front if you have to replace them. Some people replace them as a preventative thing, but we're not going to do that. So let me put it back together, and then we're gonna look at the fuse holders and the pins. Basically, we just need to clean them up, right? And we need to test those bridges to make sure they're all right. So that's our next step. Okay, folks, I replaced that ugly diode. Put a new one in. All right, but we need to test all of them. You know this complicates things, y'all being here. You know that, right? That one's good. I don't know about that one. That one might not be good. I can't even see it, though, where I'm at. Do we have another dead one? Maybe. Or am I just not touching it right? I think I'm just not touching it right. Okay, that one's good too. We'll just have to take my word for it. That one's good. And that one's good. All those are good. Okay. Our varistor is good. Okay, now to check these bridges, it's real easy if you've never done this. There's 3 bridges. These are the little posts on the other side of the board, right? So the two opposite each other are AC, and then the other is positive and negative. So the way the whole thing works is the power comes in here from the wall. I think it's this one. And then it goes over here to the transformer. The transformer transforms the power into several different voltages that all come back. And everywhere there is an E, like E9, E5, E11, E3, E2, that's a connection to the transformer or from the transformer. And so you get all these different voltages coming back, and it runs through these fuses in various places. Okay, and then some of the voltages run through these bridge rectifiers. One of the voltages runs through these diodes, and one of the voltage don't run through a thing. I think one of them is just AC, stays AC. One of them runs through these. I think that's the display voltage. It's like 250 volts or something. And then you have 3 DC voltages here. Right, of course, this is a DC voltage too after it runs through the diodes. These resistors hardly ever go bad. If you get one and it's all damaged, then it needs replaced, but usually you don't have to mess with them. The fuse holders, usually pretty good. I clean them though, like I clean those with a wire brush. Just get on them pretty good. Clean them up as good as you can. If you break one of them, it was weak and needed replaced anyways. Okay? So on these bridge rectifiers, you've got 2 AC pins, and then you've got a negative and a positive. So the AC voltage comes in through these 2 pins, and then leaves as DC through the positive and the negative. So the easy way to test it is you put it on diode test, And then you find the negative, and you put your positive lead on the negative. And then you put your black lead on the AC. And that is basically you're checking a diode, right? So if it's between 0.4 and 0.7, you're good. And then you do it with the other one, okay? Well, you got to make a good connection too, okay? So we just checked the diode from here to there and here to there, and they're fine, okay? So now we got to do the other side. So this is the positive pin. We're going to put our black lead on the positive, and then our red lead on AC. 0.5, 0.5, if we jump up here and do the same, 0.461, 0.461. They don't have to be exactly the same. They just need to be between 0.4 and 0.7. 0.486. 0.486. Okay, and then we get to do the other side of this one. 0.476. 0.476. And then this is the last one we didn't mess with. It's moving on me. 0.464. 0.465. You can tell if the bridge is bad, usually because the fuse is blown, right? So all three of those bridges are fine. All of those diodes are fine, including the one we replaced. All of the fuses are fine. That one was the 5 amp one. We replaced it. Everything's cool. So I got all those nice and clean and shiny. I got the 3 screws back in so it's held in place good on the board. I cleaned all of these pins with my wire brush. They're nice and shiny. Everything's cool. So this is about as good as it really needs to be. You can make it better if you want. You can put a brand new board on here, but you know, eventually you're kind of just throwing good money after bad. Well, it's not really that, because you're not wasting it. I mean, it's usable with a new board, but you don't usually need one. Now, we did a video a while back on a $6 million man, understand? And that $6 million man had at some point caught on fire. There was like a real big burned mark over here, and it was all screwed up. So on that one, we took that board, and I've got a whole bunch of these old used ones. We took that board and we replaced it with another used one. So in that case, yeah, a new board would be perfectly fine because you need it. But if it's like in this kind of condition, now think about what's going on here. It's been working fine, or at least it has survived 43 years. This is 2022 when I'm filming this. 43 years. And there's nothing really wrong with it. I mean, I just can't see spending 60, 70 bucks on a new board when you don't need it. It's almost disrespectful to the old board after it held on there for so long. So we're going to put it back in the machine and let it keep on keeping on, because it's done so well for us, so far. And if you didn't see the first video, this was in a mobile home out in the middle of a field with the wall knocked off of it and open to the elements and the animals and who God knows what else for all those years. And it's still kind of trying to do its thing. Let's help it do its thing, right? So we just cleaned it up a little bit. You notice I didn't spend hardly any money doing this. I replaced one diode, but I could have just left that one. It probably worked fine. It's just a little ugly, so I fixed it, right? And then there was one fuse, but, you can't really count what you spend on fuses. I mean, fuses are an item that needs replaced every once in a while. The other fuses are the original ones. I cleaned them a little bit. They test good. Keep using them. The fuse doesn't really wear out. It burns out whenever you have a problem. The resistors don't usually need replaced, right? The varistor, if it hasn't burnt up, it doesn't need replaced. Your bridges, sometimes the bridge for the lamps, I think it's the lamps, one of them sometimes will go bad, but it just depends on the game. I rarely run into one that's bad. Knock on plywood, a particle board. I usually don't run into bridges that are bad. They do go bad. I've had them bad, and I've seen other people talk about, replacing it and how they repair them and stuff, but I usually don't have a lot of bad bridges. So, it's a little browned on the plastic there, so you could replace that if you wanted to, but if the pins are still fine, I don't know. It's just how I see it. I kind of like leaving as much of it original as possible and helping it keep going, but some people would prefer to put a whole new thing in. I can understand that too. Whatever you want to do. You got to make up your mind. I just don't like it when people act like one way is right or wrong. You know what I mean? If you put a new one, that's not really wrong. But if you want to use your old one, that's not really wrong either. Just do whatever you enjoy. Remember, these are games. We're supposed to be enjoying them, people. We're supposed to be having fun. And half of the fun is working on them to bring them back from the dead. Okay? So I'm going to go put it back in the machine, and then we're going to test the voltages on these test points here. And make sure we've got the right voltages coming out of it before we plug anything else up to it. And that'll be, if that's correct, then we'll have one nice solid, the power supply will be nice and solid that we can build the rest of the game's electronics on. So you always want to start with the power brick and go from there. All right, so we tested the voltages, and guess what? Test point 1 wasn't right. It's supposed to be 6 volts. It was 3 volts. And I was just saying earlier that the bridges usually don't die. And then one died on me. That's called instant karma. Down, down, down. So I went ahead and put one in. So if you're going to replace it, you can put the little 8 amp bridges in. But if they've already burnt up, they're undersized, right? So I went with a big old honking 35 amp bridge. Now it ain't gonna burn up. So whenever you do it though, if it's basically you want to leave room to do all 3 if you have to. So like if you have to put another one here and another one here, so I always kind of try to set it off to the side so you got room for all 3 of them. And you just bend the legs right where it fits on. And hopefully that'll never need updated. So there we go. You can put a little heat sink on it too, but if you're going from 8 amps to 35 amps, you're like way overkilling it. So I don't think you really need the heat sink. But there you go. Okay, so I'm going to put it in, and then I'll show you us testing the voltages so we can see if everything's cool, and hopefully that test point 1 is no longer 3 volts. Okay, so I cleaned the bottom there a little bit. Looks a lot better already. Left the bullet hole. Painted the little metal guard so it looks a little better. And then our wiring here is a mess, but we've got enough that we can test it. So we got it all mounted back in there how it goes. And that's how they would have looked when new. So let me set up the tripod so we can test the voltages and see if we're any better. Okay, so we're going to check the voltages. Here's how you do it. Put your meter on DC. You want to take your ground probe, and the best place to grab the ground, there is a ground trace going all the way around the board. You can get it here at the bottom of this resistor. So I'm touching the bottom pin of that resistor. And then my positive probe up on test point 1. We're unplugged. If the game's unplugged, you will get no voltage. So we got to plug the game in. Put the power to it. I heard power. I don't have any of the lights plugged in, so I can't tell if it's on or not. Test point 1, 6.27. Boy, that's dead on the money. That's where you ought to be. If you're between 5 and 6.8 or so, don't worry about it. 6.81 though, huh? Test point 2, 181 volts. That's supposed to be 250 volts. That's for the displays. But if you don't have anything plugged in, usually you're more like 180. So that's good too, because we have no load on it. And there's a filter capacitor on the regulator board that's not plugged in. So without that, the voltage is lower. Test point 3. 12.5 volts. Okay, that's the 12 volts that gets rectified down to 5 volts to run all of the chips on all of the boards. So it's at 12 volts. That's good. Okay. Test point 4 we're going to skip because it's AC. Test point 5. 45 volts. That's your solenoid voltage. You know, between 40, 48, something like that. You're good. Okay, and then we're going to switch to AC. Test point 4. 7.3 volts. That's the voltage for the lamps on the playfield. A little bit high, but that's kind of common because it's not regulated at all. And as line voltage has gone up over the years, I think that's what it does. These transformers ship wired for 115. You could probably change it to wire for 120, which is more representative of what's coming out of the wall. But what can you do? I guess we could swap it, but so that's a little bit high. The bulbs are 47 bulbs, which I think are rated for 6.3 volts. So it's kind of a common Bally thing, right? So with the exception of that, we're looking pretty dead on the money though. So I think we're good. So we'll think about if we want to change that jumper, but I've never really done that before. I always just run with it being 7 volts. But in the future, I might consider doing that whenever I run through these. Because if we keep leaving it that, it's probably going to keep creeping up. It seems like our line voltage is higher and higher all the time. I wonder if I can tell. I don't know which two coming in are the actual voltage from the wall. Well, here, I can check. Let me unplug it. Here's our voltage from the wall. We're still on AC, right? I hope. 122 out of the wall. So, a little high. I think I'll just call the power company and see if they can get it back down to 115. All right, folks, so we got that back. Got that done. We're getting there. Got the lights back on. I just plugged the plug back in. We've still got to do some repair on those plugs. And then we have to work on this solenoid driver board. And then we have to install the new MPU. We're not going to use that old one. And then we have to work on the lamp driver board. And then we have to build displays for all of it. And then we have to install the nice back glass. And then we have to replace all the light bulbs under the playfield to make sure they're all right. Then we got to put a new piece of glass on it. We got to test play it. We got to rebuild the flippers. Still got a little ways to go, but we're getting there. So I hope you enjoyed it so far. Make sure to give us a comment down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up. And I wanted to share with you, one of our wonderful readers sent me a letter. I'm going to read it for you. I'm trying to decide if I should read it in a funny voice or not. Nah. All right, so this letter comes from Matt in Kent, Ohio. You know, we have lots of Matts that come in our shop here. All the Matts are cool that I know. I don't know that I've met a Matt that I don't... Well, there's that one guy. Okay. All right, so here's the note. Let's read along. Ron, I love your videos, man. Well, thank you, Matt. That's nice of you to say. We're just trying to have a little fun and take you along for the ride. I have a workshop in my basement where I restore pins and I play your videos every time I'm working on a game. That's pretty cool. He's probably working on a game right now watching this video. Matt, you missed a light bulb. While cleaning up the playfield of a friend's Bally bow and arrow EM pinball machine, I decided to make him new spinner decals. Very cool. Bow and arrow. I have never worked on that one. I've seen a bunch of them, but I've never actually worked on it. I had made extra and figured, hey, why not send Ron some? Come on, people. I had extra. Come on now. Come on, Matt. You know you didn't need all those spinner decals. Why'd you... Come on, Matt. There's only two... Come on, Matt. There's only... If there's only two... Why would you... Matt, why would you have extra if there's only two? Now I gotta go look. How many... Bally, bow, and arrow. Yeah, I can see now. See, look. He's probably working on this exact game from the Internet Pinball database, and they had the wrong sticker on the left spinner. That's what they're supposed to look like. But there's only two. Why would you have... How would you have extra if there's two? You can see right there that there's supposed to be... If there's supposed... There's supposed to be two. Why would you have... You can just make two. Why would you have... I don't understand why you would have... I had made extra and figured, hey, why not send Ron some? Come on, people. I had extra. Well, Matt, we appreciate you thinking about us. Hopefully you can use them on a customer's EM you work on or a game of your own. Keep pumping out great videos and take care. Matt from Kent, Ohio. Thank you, Matt. I gotta say, you know, I've bought some replacement decals from reputable companies. I won't name names. That do not look as good as that. Those are very nice. Look at the attention to detail. First of all, they're printed very nicely. They're laminated by something, which means that they'll stand up to getting hit by a pinball. And then the corners are rounded too. Look at that. That's really well done. Thank you, Matt. We will use those on something. If I use it on something that I can get a good video of, I'll mention it whenever I put them on there. What I do sometimes if I print them, it's not really the best way to do it with an inkjet printer. So what I'll do is I'll spray paint them. I'll print them and then spray them so that they've got some kind of protection over them. So we won't use them on this machine, of course, but hopefully we'll find one in the future we can put those on. We will save them until then. So I hope you folks enjoyed the video. Thank you, Matt, for your spinner decals and watching our videos. And thank you to the rest of you. Make sure to leave your comments down below, and we will see you on the next video.